We're going to be talking about Liferay and Water for People, a nonprofit organization that delivers water to various parts of the world. And I'm calling this From Data to Information. We're going to talk a little bit about who we are, EffectiveUI, the Water for People reimagined reporting platform that we built for them on Liferay. And specifically, one of the things that was kind of a neat challenge, what we did, and get into a little bit about how we did it. And followed up by some Q&A. So who are we? We're EffectiveUI. We are the world's most mature and award-winning user-focused technology firm. What we do is focus on the user experience as the primary driver of design, development. So we do have the creative designers in-house as well as the development team to actually realize those designs if that's the engagement that we have with our clients. We are a silver partner with Liferay and founded in April 2005. We've got about 100 full-time employees right now. And we are based out of Denver, where I'm from. We do have offices also in Rochester, Manhattan, Seattle, and here in San Francisco as well. So Water for People. They are working to bring various groups together to get water to the actual communities that need them, right? And so that's working with communities and with governments and civil societies and local entrepreneurs. And the idea that's really neat about Water for People is that they are really committed to making a sustainable effort. In other words, teaching them to fish, metaphorically, right? So you get to the point where they're no longer dependent. And so that's a big push for the Water for People organization. So what they wanted to do was to provide a transparent reporting platform. And by transparent, we're talking about warts and all. Okay, so there is something that we're looking at that isn't doing well. They want to show that. They want to have that, that transparency to not only show when things are working, but almost more importantly, when things are not working, where the efforts are needed the most. So that was the big motivator behind this reimagined reporting platform. And they also wanted to provide not only just data, but a narrative story. So there was a CMS component as well. So kind of humanizing a geographical location. So there's the data, might be a little dry, but having somebody talking about, we just got a new well in our district, and that's a real exciting thing. That kind of humanizes that. So why Liferay? Well, as has been talked about several times, and we're all here and we know it's an industry leader in the portal space, and it has a lot of really cool features. So that mix of content publishing, the CMS, content management system, as well as the ability to create our own data-driven application was a really compelling feature about Liferay. As we hear this whole symposium, we're going to be hearing about all the out-of-the-box tools, and that really is, that is a great driver for innovation. And it's open source, so philosophically, that was in alignment with what Water for People was looking to do. So it's community-driven, right? That really resonated with Water for People. And a shared vision of making a better world. So what I want to do now, we've got a video of Ned Breslin, the CEO of Water for People, is going to talk a little bit about the organization and what they do.
Just drilling wells will not solve the global water crisis. We're going to get 30 districts, close to 4 million people, to full coverage. Every family, every school, and every clinic. We're going to use that to propel 4 countries to full coverage. Not just the easy to reach, but the hardest. Not just the most vocal, but those who are silent. Not just the richest, but the poorest. Every family, every clinic, every school, everyone. No one is left out. And we're going to do all this by the end of 2018. So how do we do this? We produce results that last, results that multiply, results that transform, eradicating water poverty forever. Numbers we stand behind, so should you.
Some powerful stuff and important work. And you saw in the video there were some things, some small like smartphone devices, that's how they're collecting the data actually at the source. Right? So there's a system called Flow where these, the people that are there can take survey questions to really monitor the health and sustainability of any given water source. And all that data is fed into this system. At the time that we're developing this platform for them, that Flow system was getting the information in, but it did not yet have, and is still, I think, working through the process of having a really rich API to get that information out. So what happens is that data goes from the Flow system into Excel spreadsheets, and that's basically the data of record that Water for People themselves are using. So that's our data source. Right? The data is in the Flow system, yes, but for all intents and purposes to interact with that data, it's Excel. All right? And there's additional data. There's financial data from another source. There are community surveys, other types of surveys, readiness surveys. There's also that narrative content that I mentioned earlier. So all this adds up to a lot of spreadsheets. But the big question, what does all of this mean? We've got a ton of data, numbers bouncing around, all kinds of metrics, but what does it all mean? So what we needed to look at, we wanted to tell the story of how the information from the ground kind of tells the story, rolls up into larger and larger geographical units. And we know we needed to deal with spreadsheets. So how do we get that information into the application? And then, of course, the big question, how do you visualize that data meaningfully? So let's start with the ending. And by that, I mean, let's start by taking a quick look at the site itself, the finished product, if you will. We saw Ned talking about everyone and forever. These concepts are somewhat intuitive, right? That you want everyone to be serviced, and sustainability, you want them to be able to manage this themselves ongoing, right? So these metrics are what we're talking about, everyone and forever, that they really wanted to show and tell that story. So real quick, we're going to look at this. This is the home page of the new reporting site. And you can see, right, that these map pins have the everyone and forever score rolled up. So let's go down into El Negrito. And we've got the everyone and the forever scores, 75 and 82%. These are scores that are derived from metrics that are also available that you can drill into and see some of the actual questions. Has improved water point, right? Quantity of water available meets standards, yes or no. So all this is taken together to tell the story in the data and visualized here at 75 and 82%. So when we go up to Honduras, which is made up of these 4 locations that were just there, right here, all right, we're now showing the aggregate, kind of the rolled up score for Honduras. There's El Negrito, the 75-82 we saw before. And now our average for the country, 70 and 80%. So we roll up again into Central America, the region, and we've got the 3 countries serviced by Water for People. We're rolling that up, and then Central America rolls up globally. Okay, so we've got everyone and forever scores here, as well as the other regions that Water for People is serving. So that's kind of a high-level, quick look at what we had built. So let's talk about the data. We have got a location hierarchy, right? So district, country, region, global, and data is tied to the district level. But we need a way to roll that up to the higher levels, okay? So we can see here that's that location hierarchy that I'm speaking about. So a warning, fair warning, we're going to start getting a little technical. How can we model this? Well, one way, we do have the lat long, right? You can start thinking of this as a map problem. We can start thinking about map pins, lat long, where this stuff is going to live. So that means modeling it with some, a region, country, district possible, and helping that to plot on a map using some type of map API. That's one way to think about it. And when you see maps, it's kind of, for some of us, that's the first thing that you would think of going down that road. But as we really look at the problem a little bit more, we see that the navigation is the location hierarchy, right? So with Liferay, we've got the child page and parent page relationships. So we can model it this way with the Liferay tools that we have out of the box. We're creating the hierarchy of location really is just the child page, right? So it's navigation as a data model. And now Liferay's got some things that are already built out to help us with that problem. We can use their layout table, and that gives us a foreign key in database speak to what we really are looking for, which is these district scores. All right, so Service Builder, for the non-technical or just new to Liferay, explain briefly about Service Builder. It's a tool that you set up an XML document that goes through this tool, which then generates all the model and service utility classes to interact with your database. So you don't have to write that database layer code. Service Builder does all that for you. It's a really neat feature. So this is an example of a Service Builder file. And we've got this district level or district layout PLID. The PLID is the page layout ID in that layout table. That's what a page is in Liferay. It's in that layout table. Okay, so we've got that as kind of a foreign key. We've got finder methods, which are these things here that are ways to extract the data using Service Builder. So all these things that are defined here will be part of that utility class that Liferay is going to build for us. So the next step is, all right, we've got all these things in spreadsheets. We have a database, and we've defined classes to help us get data in and out of that database. But how are we going to get out of the spreadsheets? So here's what we did. We decided to create a dedicated folder and register that folder in the documents and media. Remember, everything lives in spreadsheets. So we're going to take advantage of Liferay's built-in documents and media functionality. It's got versioning. It's got all the things that you would want with a document management. We're dealing with Excel spreadsheets, so it makes perfect sense. We want to register a special data folder for that. And we're going to let the admins associate the spreadsheets in that folder with parsers for that data type. In other words, the code that actually knows what to do with that particular type of file. If it's a financial spreadsheet, we have a parser that is aware of where things are supposed to be in the rows and the columns of that particular file, right? And then we register the parsers with parser data types just so that we can look them up. I want, there's a financial type, and so it's how I look up to get the right parser. And lastly, we extract the data from the spreadsheet and put it into the database using the classes that, again, Service Builder built for us. So the first one, we're going to register this data folder ID. And there's a couple ways that you can get hold of the folder ID, right? This 10531. It's in the URL. This is a screenshot of the documents and media section. So we create, being the incredibly creative person that I am, I'm calling it data. And so this data folder contains these spreadsheets. You can also get it not only from the URL, but actually directly in the SQL using the DL folder table, where the name is data. Right, so once we get that, we're going to register that in the portal ext properties, which is basically the properties file that either overrides or extends Liferay's own portal properties. So now we have a property called data.folder.id, and Liferay provides some utilities for getting that out. Right, so that's our folder ID. Now, once there, we can use Liferay's API to basically get these file entry objects, a list of file entry objects. And we're going to put that in a Spring MVC model. We had JSF being talked about earlier in the session before mine. I'm a big Spring fan. I love Spring. So when I can use it, I try to. I like the way that the annotations and the dependency injection works. So that I tend to go that way. So here we've got the data types we're going to call data types, and the file entries we're going to call file entries. Put that in the model so that they're available here in the JSP, which uses some JSTL, the Java standard tag library, to iterate through all the data types and put them in just a regular HTML select, a drop-down list, right? And then we iterate through all the file entries and create a little table with some of the metadata, the create date, the modify date, et cetera, and a radio button on the side to select that has the ID associated with it. So it looks like this. And this allows admins to say, OK, here's all the files that are currently in that data folder. Again, that's why we registered it, so that once you're done with it, you can move it off into another folder and you don't have to see it again. So we wanted to get a handle on it so we knew exactly which ones we're dealing with here. And using Spring, wire up the parsers. That's using, and this is Spring expression language allows enumerations to be used as map keys for the technically into that. I think that's a neat thing. And then this automatically is put into the controller. It's given to you. That's what dependency injection is. You don't have to go ask for what you need. You just have what you need. So extracting the data from the spreadsheet, we're going to use an Apache product called POI, which is the Java API for Microsoft Documents, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, what have you. This right here is a little code snippet about how we get from a file entry to a POI workbook. And the workbook then is basically the Excel spreadsheet that we can actually work through. And just to kind of show, we go through all the cells in a given row. We go one row at a time and then go cell, cell, cell. Each column has a different data type. Could be string, could be numeric, like this one here. And then we know what to do with it. So if, as we go across 1, 2, 3, we know what we're doing at any given time. So that's how we write the parser. Now, Service Builder has given us our classes, this district score local service util, that we can, this is how we interact with the database and that object. So if it's already there, we look it up and we modify whatever we need to modify. If it's not there, we can create it and then put in that bit of data. Simple stuff. So how do we show the data rolled up in the pin? Well, let's define the problem. What are we really asking for? Okay, what we're really asking is we've got two scores keyed to a location name and rendered in a specific location on an image, which happens to be a map, but we don't care that it's a map at this point. We've gotten away from thinking about maps and map APIs. This is really just an image, right? And we have to have this available to us in multiple portlets. So there are different portlets that have to get at this information without causing a page refresh. And of course, that means AJAX, right? So from the database to the pin, we're going to talk about structured content and templates, which Liferay provides for their structured web content. And we're going to create a system portlet for the AJAX call, so it's available for any of the other portlets to access. And we're going to render that data using a third-party library called HiCharts. So structured content. Those of you familiar with working with Liferay's Web CMS, this will look familiar. What we're doing here is we're defining an image, right? And several points. Each point has a name. Like this would be Central America as a name. We give it XY coordinates, because that's really all we're talking about. We just need to get the XY coordinates from your favorite image editing tool. And then we know where the center of that little white circle is. And for good measure, we also put in a way to add in the everyone and forever scores for any point if it's not in the data. Sometimes they know what those scores are, but they're not ready to parse the actual data files. So they wanted a way to get that information on the pin when the spreadsheet itself was not ready to be put into the system. So we gave it kind of an override or add if it's not there kind of thing right here with these last two. And the template basically is just getting out, do we have that information? Do we have an everyone and forever score that the structured content has? If not, we're going to set it to -1. If we do, we're going to set that score. We get the location out. And then we're going to call a JavaScript function with that data. Now this right here is how we're actually going to get the rolled up, the actual data out of the database. We're requesting a resource. There are the three types of portlet actions that you can have, right? There's action, render, and resource. Resource means it's not going to do a new refresh of all the portlets on the page. So we can just get that information out. And we're going to look for a resource that we're calling EF scores. When we get back that information on success, we're going to pull out something called a score map. And that is going to be the information that we want. All right. So I mentioned a system portlet. This is something in the Liferay portlet XML. You can define something as a system portlet. And that allows it, because of all the permission checking mechanisms that Liferay has for guest users, in other words, users who are not logged in, we need to make this accessible to them as well so we can bypass some of the permission checking that goes on. So that's just something to be aware of. If you're trying to do this at home, don't forget to do that because it won't work. So in our controller, we have a resource of EF scores. We need to get what our current page is. Where are we now? Right? So these couple lines right here, these 3 lines, tell us what that current page is. We have a way to get what year we're talking about, and then we're going to call into this service passing the year and our current location in the app, our current layout, get the score map, and return it in a JSON view. So how do we get the roll-up? Well, we've talked about APIs. Let's go back to Liferay's layout API, okay? We can start with the current layout and walk down to every district child page that it has. So that would be something like, okay, if layout.hasChildren, go get those children and iterate through those until you run out of children, right? Until you've gone as far down as you can get, then you get that PLID, the unique identifier for that district page, because remember, data is always tied to the district. And that's how we get all of those. We have a finder method that in the code looks like this. So this finder method creates this through Service Builder. So we're going to pass in all the district IDs that we're concerned with and the year, and it's going to give us back all our scores. And do a little math, average them together, how, that's just the straight up averaging tasks. But we end up with Guatemala has service 65, sustainability 28. We want to group them by the layout names of one layer deeper than where we currently are. So if I'm at Central America, I want a group of Guatemalan every one and forever scores, Honduras, and Nicaragua, one layer down. So we're grouping those together. And now, because everything's been grouped together by that location name, I can look in the score map for every point. That location value will pull out my everyone and forever scores out of just a regular hash map kind of structure. And as long as it's not -1, or if it is -1, which means we haven't provided an override, then we've got these scores. That's water services, the everyone, water sustainability is the forever. And we call that in to some JavaScript. It does the basic span and div stuff that we want to put this on the map, and call through then to HiCharts. Okay? And the HiCharts API is what creates that nice graph, or that nice pie chart, the donut chart. HiCharts API, it really is a neat tool that can do a lot of different things. It's a JavaScript library, if you're not familiar with it, and have a need for something like any of these kinds of charts, take a look at it. It really is nice. So that's how we did what we did. And some of the successes that we had in the project as a whole, rapid development with Liferay and creating these pages and child pages. We were really quick to get up and play around with some different design ideas and really get that up and out a lot quicker. And we've got complex data that we were able to render in really intuitive visual information. The out-of-the-box tools, CMS and the document management system also, they really help guide the solution, and that is not to be underestimated. When you've got a particular set of tools in a toolbox, when you've got a lot of tools, it helps to get that solution and help guide that solution by knowing what you have available. The theming we use for a consistent look and feel, and the navigation along the top, and the ability that Liferay has to customize their own existing portlets gave us exactly what we needed. There's other things that we did in this particular project that were more CMS-based. That's not part of this talk, but we did some cool things there, extending and customizing the asset publisher portlet, for example. And by making portlets as page composition and thinking of it that way, it also helped break up the development tasks into manageable units, right? So we've got this thing does one thing on the page. Let's solve that problem, and then something else is something else. So you don't have to think about it holistically on a page. So one of the other successes was doing something that was really, I was proud to work with Water for People. What they're doing is really important. It really is a great organization, and it's inspiring to work with them. They're just doing so much good, and they're so forward-thinking in terms of this platform. And so some of the things that they're looking for now as we're engaging with them on a V2, looking at maybe some trends, right? Maybe establishing a platform. We want to continue to have some innovation with Liferay's capabilities and their data set. And at the bottom line, where it all comes down is improving lives. So that's our story with EffectiveUI and Water for People. And are there any questions or comments or? And also would like to point out that EffectiveUI is now looking for Liferay developers. So if you know anybody that is looking to become a Liferay developer, send them my way. The whole development process, I think, was about 5 to 6 months, if I recall correctly. The team was basically myself and a UI engineer. So, not a big team at all. And then, of course, there were designers and that part of the team, but I think you're probably referring to development specifically. So development specifically on Liferay was me and another UI developer. Liferay provides a way to make structured web content. So you can have, your web content could be just what they call a WYSIWYG, right? What you see is what you get, and you can kind of create it on the fly to make your own web content. You can also define it and create structures. So I know that I need a first name, I know I need a last name, I know I need whatever, and you can define these things in the Liferay control panel to create a new structure. And for every structure, so you've got, the structure has a named element, right? Some kind of piece of content that might be an image, it might be a text box, it might be a drop-down, whatever, right? And those things are whatever you're trying to model. All right, so that's only one half of it. The template is the rendering of each of those things and how you get that. So that's part of the Liferay Web CMS toolkit, if you will. So encourage you to take a look at the online documentation for creating the web content, and you'll see very similar things to what I was showing here. All right, well, thanks again.